And we commemorate this illegal invasion back in July of 1974, which right now, unfortunately, we are in its 45th year. And every year I say, I hope to never have to have one of these commemorations again, but here we are nonetheless.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to see you all today. I see a lot of very familiar faces, and let me tell you, when I came to Congress in 2011, I wanted to make as many friends as I could on both sides of the aisle, and I have some very strong special advocacies. One is for our great ally Israel in the Middle East, and I met a gentleman from Florida by the name of Gus Bilirakis, and Gus and I became very strong and fast friends, and he said, what do you like to do? And I was all excited. I went on the trip to Israel, and he said, well, I'd like to talk to you about Hellenic issues involving Greece and Cyprus and what's going on in the region. My point is, you all could not have a stronger advocate than Congressman Bilirakis. He's well-liked in both bodies. He's well-liked across the aisles. He's a true gentleman, and he's my great friend. Having said that, since that time, I joined the Greek-Israeli caucus, which is great. I want to thank you all for the strong relationship there. And I'm a student of Western civilization. I'm a political science history major lawyer, and we cannot talk about great Western civilization without talking about Greece. I mean, it's the birthplace of democracy. When I think of Socrates and Plato and Aristotle and all the great works, the classic works. And today, Greece is still a strong ally of the United States, a strong ally of Israel, and it's an ally we can count on in a very difficult part of the world. I understand the very difficult situation in Cyprus. I understand it's existed since the 70s. And I will continue to do my very best to help you all. If I can give a piece of advice, your organization is outstanding. You are omnipresent on the Hill, which is great. We just don't see you one time out of the year. We see you at events. When the Patriarch was in recently, so don't lose those opportunities to come up, work with people on both sides of the aisle. It surprises me sometimes how issues sometimes are not always partisan. Sometimes they can be regional, and sometimes you can build an affinity for certain causes. So I've certainly built an affinity for your cause, and I wish you the very best in the future.
Good morning. I'll start with a light story, but Congressman Fleischman talked about his connection with Israel and the Greek philosophers. Mine goes when I graduated college. I lived in Israel. I had studied engineering, so I really didn't have much philosophy, so I took that time to start reading some Greek philosophers. I was on a program of post-college graduates, and I was talking, we ate in a common room like this, and I was talking to one of the people on the program what I was reading, and she was pontificating, and I'm thinking about what I'm reading, and I'm thinking about what she's saying. They made no sense, and I don't know why I'm telling you this story. I'm going to be embarrassed, but so I said, were you a philosophy major in college? She goes, no, but I dated one for a year. And that was her link to philosophy. But that was my first mix. I think, and I jump ahead, and proud to be one of the founding members of the Congressional Hellenic Israeli Alliance, CHIA, as you mentioned. And I think when I first started running for Congress in 2012, long connection to the Greek American community in Chicago, but not on a political level, more on just a friendship level when we started talking politics and understanding what was at stake. And it was at the beginning of the development of the gas in the Eastern Mediterranean, and gas fields, and the relationship and the opportunities. And I remember July 20th, 1974 as a young man. But I only understood in the context of what you saw on TV. I've since had the chance to understand the implications 45 years since the occupation of Cyprus and what's at stake. To understand the relationship between the countries in the Eastern Mediterranean and what's at stake, but also the opportunity. And most importantly, to understand the importance of the relationship between our country and Greece and Cyprus and the Eastern Mediterranean and what's at stake. And we need to continue to work to build on those relationships. I had the privilege of going to visit Greece in 2017, 2 years ago. We went to Athens, and met with leaders there, met with our ambassador, Ambassador Pyatt there. And for me, it's the appreciation of the relationship, the knowledge that we have so much that binds us and so much opportunity ahead of us, but we need to make sure that we stay focused, not just on the future, but focused on the future with an appreciation of the history and those connections between our countries. So I am proud that the relationship between parties, Republicans and Democrats, we find bridging opportunities. This is one of those issues that is a bridging opportunity. We will continue to build on this relationship. We will continue to stay focused on justice and ensuring the security of the region, but also fixing the challenges that face us ahead. I look forward to working together.
And thank you to AHI for having me, and to Nick for your work, and my excellent colleagues, Congresswoman Maloney and Congressman Bilirakis, the co-chairs of the Congressional Hellenic Caucus, of which I'm a proud member, and I think they do excellent work. As you all know, as was mentioned, I'm from Jersey, northern New Jersey, land of the diners, Xenon, and other great, very proud Greek American and Greek Cypriot community. And since taking office, I've heard from so many friends and neighbors just how important your issues are. And Brad has a better dating-related story. I can just tell you, in my district, what I hear just so often is less about dating, but more about eating, and how important your excellent food is in my culture all the time, and how often I have plates put in front of me. And I'll tell you, I've probably gained a few pounds from it. The East Mediterranean is not only the birthplace of democracy, but it is, as we've all seen, of vital strategic importance to the United States. Allies like Cyprus and Greece and Israel. You saw yesterday actually a piece of legislation that Brad led so adroitly against the BDS movement. It was really a very big, important win against anti-Semitism, but also for the region and for Israel, and Brad really did an excellent job on that. And as Greece and Israel and Cyprus are increasingly subject to hostility and competition, as you all know, from Russia and Syria and Iran, and of course Turkey. It was 45 years ago that Turkey violated international law and invaded Cyprus, which we don't forget about, dividing the country and illegally occupying the northern third of the island. I believe the United States' failure to prevent Turkey's act of aggression at the time will long remain an extraordinary blemish on the historical record of American foreign policy. In the aftermath of the invasion and occupation, the American Hellenic Institute was established, which was a very important marker, I think, in history, and also, as was pointed out, this community's remained a real force in Washington to make sure to push the values of democracy and the rule of law, and that is very important, especially in these halls. And I'm very proud, along with Ted and Brad and Gus and others, to urge the Secretary of State to support further cooperation in the Eastern Mediterranean to protect Cyprus's right to explore and develop an exclusive economic zone. The growing strategic partnership between Greece, Israel, and Cyprus and the United States has been a tremendous boon to our interests in the region. But as you know, it must be guarded against the provocations of an increasingly emboldened and aggressive Turkey. We see it regularly. We must stand up to it. The ambassador knows better. It's very, very important that we just stay vigilant. It's not hard to see why so many Americans and members of Congress are concerned about Turkey's recent hostility and aggression against our values and interests. Turkey has captured and held hostage American citizens, disregarded democracy and the rule of law at home, and now seeks delivery of Russian S-400 missile systems. Enough is enough, which is why I believe many of you are here, because many of us are very proud to have joined efforts like Mr. Sarbanes and Gus's efforts to halt the planned delivery of F-35 fighter jets to Turkey, and the American Hellenic Institute has been a strong leader in that effort. And while some 40,000 Turkish troops are stationed in the occupied part of Cyprus, armed with weapons procured from the United States through mainland Turkey, our ally, the Republic of Cyprus, is prohibited from obtaining defense articles or services from the U.S. and must instead turn to other nations, including Russia. So earlier this year, I co-sponsored a piece of legislation, the Eastern Mediterranean Partnership Act, bipartisan legislation introduced in the House by Ted Deutsch, who was an excellent leader, and by my dear friend and senator from Jersey, Senator Bob Menendez, who does an excellent job in the Senate. It will lift arms embargo on Cyprus and ensure we will continue to play a vital role in this immensely important region. Because here's the bottom line: whether in Eastern Mediterranean or elsewhere, there is simply no substitute for robust U.S. leadership. It is only an increased U.S. presence that can be sure to keep Turkey's regional aggression in check or prevent the incursion of Russian ships off the coast of Syria. That's why the United States must continue to stand by our key allies like Cyprus in the region, continue to support the reunification of Cyprus, and continue to strengthen and enhance the bilateral ties between our two countries. Very important. I'm very honored that you had me here today, and I'm grateful, I know we all are, for your excellent work. So let us know how we can be helpful. Thank you.
And of course, we are reminded that currently, as we are here today, the President of the Republic of Cyprus, Mr. Anastasiades, has referred to what's going now in the economic exclusive zone of Cyprus as that as a, quote, second invasion, end quote. And you can almost say it's a third invasion as well. Be it as it may, it's a problem. And I know the government of Cyprus is dealing with it as best as it can right now and in the international community. But the United States, in my opinion, needs to take an more active role rather than just the rhetoric that we hear. The rhetoric is good, but actions are more important. And we shall see how this plays out, but we will be very vigilant and continuously do what we can to pressure the administration, the State Department, and Capitol Hill to be a little bit more forceful regarding Turkey and the actions in the Eastern Mediterranean, which unfortunately destabilize the region and by extension threatens U.S. and Western geostrategic interest in the Eastern Mediterranean. We have American companies there led by Mobil and with its partnership with Qatar, and it's unfathomable that Turkey has sent in 3 ships with a 4th ship, I believe, Mr. Ambassador, on its way. And they are operating in the EEZ. And the European Union has basically just slapped the wrist of Turkey at best, in my estimation. And they are occupying EU territory at the end of the day. A NATO ally, which you can argue with NATO troops, is occupying a member of the European Union. So we'll still see how this gets played out. But tensions are running high, and you can call it maybe this is DEFCON 4. If there was a defense condition right now within the island of Cyprus, it's at least 4, if not higher. So tensions are running high, and the stakes are very high.
Thank you, Nick, and I want to thank you and AHI for all the work that you do over the years to make sure that we keep our focus on the injustice of the division of Cyprus. Mr. Ambassador, always good to see you and others in the room. And I also want to thank the co-chairs of the Hellenic Caucus for all their work over the years and the members of the caucus. Look, we gather here to remember the 45th anniversary of the Turkish invasion of the island. And we find ourselves 45 years later at a time where we've got to work even harder than ever to resolve this injustice. Earlier this year, I had the opportunity to visit Cyprus, met with the president of Cyprus, part of a congressional delegation. We walked down the Green Line. My wife, Catherine, joined us on that trip, and it was another stark reminder as you walk along the Green Line of the work we need to do to heal the wounds and peacefully resolve the division of Cyprus. Unfortunately, as we gather here 45 years later, we see Turkey taking ever more provocative actions. They've announced that they're going to be sending a ship to the southern coast of Cyprus within the Republic of Cyprus's EEZ to look for oil and gas, a very provocative move, and one where the United States needs to be very clear where we stand with respect to protecting the Republic of Cyprus's rights to its EEZ. That, of course, is coupled, unfortunately, with other actions Turkey has taken, which call into question its faithfulness as a NATO ally. I'm referring specifically to the decision to take delivery of the Russian-made S-400s. I was one of the folks who offered the amendments over the last couple of years, including this year, to make it very clear that that would undermine delivery. Turkish acceptance of the S-400 would undermine the security of NATO, certainly of our NATO pilots, and we were very clear that if Turkey takes delivery of the S-400, it's not going to get the F-35. We need to make sure the administration sticks to that position. I know they've stated that that's their position. It's also a requirement under U.S. law that Turkey be sanctioned by taking delivery of a major Russian weapon system under the CATSA legislation. And so we're also going to be working to make sure that happens. Look, I would prefer to see Turkey not take the S-400, but they seem determined at this point in time to moving in that direction. With respect to Cyprus, we also have an opportunity, as Nick was referring to take advantage of the new finds of oil and gas in the region. I am a co-sponsor of the Eastern Mediterranean Security and Energy Partnership Act that was introduced in the House and in the Senate, which, among other things, would lift the arms embargo on Cyprus. I was not pleased with some of the conditions that were added to that bill, but we will work together to move forward to pass that legislation in the full Senate and in the full House going forward. So I think the bottom line here is we have to remain vigilant. We always want to be ready to look for opportunities to come back to the negotiating table. But right now, Turkey seems of no mind to be doing that, and it's something that we're just going to have to keep pushing for, both on terms of our bilateral relationship between the United States and Turkey, pushing them, but also making it clear that we stand for the rule of law and that we will not sit back and watch Turkey violate the rule of law as it did 45 years ago. So I'm glad that we're gathering here. It's important to always remember the injustice that was done and rededicate ourselves to making sure that we achieve a peaceful resolution and a just resolution going forward. So I'm pleased to see friends of Cyprus here, and look forward to continuing to work with you.
In any case, folks, this is so very important. I was just listening to, believe it or not, on YouTube, there's a priest that was talking about, a Cypriot priest here in the United States, was talking about the invasion. And I think it's so important that people that experienced it and were there during the invasion to talk to our young people. This particular priest, 17 years old at the time, and I'm not sure exactly. We have to find out, Nick, but we need to Google it because he speaks for about 45 minutes about his experiences. And when Cyprus, when Turkey invaded Cyprus, Cyprus, really, we had a National Guard, and that was it. No army, nothing. And they asked him to stand guard of his village, 17 years old, and he was using a hunting rifle to guard the village. And again, it was just a catastrophe, and 200,000 Greeks from now the occupied area lost their homes, and they had to leave their homeland. And a lot of them went to Athens or came to the United States. But we must never, ever forget, and we must never, ever lose hope. After all, we have an archbishop now. His name is Elpidoforos, which means hope. So, and that isn't that correct? Elpida, hope. And he's a wonderful person. He's going to do so many good things for our Hellenic community here in the United States.
We do have an Eastern Mediterranean bill. Now, Nick came up with this idea years ago, about lifting the embargo. Served a purpose back in the early 80s, but not now. Cyprus needs to defend itself, and in the U.S., we need to sell weapons to Cyprus. And it's not perfect, and I know that we want to work on the language a little bit, Nick. You told me several times, but it is in the NDAA, and this is the progress we've made, and see what we can do when we stick together. The language is on both sides, the Senate side. I think that probably Chris Van Hollen, the senator from Maryland, probably talked about it. But it's on both sides, the House and the Senate. So when it's on both sides, the likelihood is in the high 90s it will become law. So in any case, and you guys know we stopped the F-35s from going to Turkey. So people are starting to realize what an important ally Cyprus is, and what an important ally Greece is, and the partnership that we formed. Maybe I played a real tiny role in this, but the partnership that we formed with Israel has been outstanding, and people are starting to take notice, folks. Now we have to speak up, and I plan to do a special order to make sure that people know what Turkey is attempting to do in the exclusive economic zone off the coast of Cyprus. Right now they're planning to drill, I believe they are drilling off the coast of Paphos, and then they plan to go around to some areas there's a lot of potential to get hydrocarbons and natural gas. So they're not going to stop, and we are the most powerful country in the world, the U.S., and we need to speak up and take action. So sanctions would be a good start. So folks, again, it's a pleasure. It's my duty and my obligation to do everything I can for our Kipro and our Lada. And after all, it is in the best interest, as Nick says, it's always in the best interest of the United States, because they are two great allies. So, ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ, and hopefully next year we will be celebrating in Cyprus, the One United Cyprus. Σας ευχαριστούμε.
It is a very difficult day for the Hellenism all around the world, Cyprus, Greece, and of the Hellenism diaspora. The day where we're commemorating the Turkish invasion in Cyprus. It is a day which has been commemorated for 45 years, as everybody said up to now. 45 years has passed, and the Hellenism all around the world is commemorating this date with deep grief, but in the same time with hope that the reunification of the island will be achieved and there will be peace in the island eventually. It is very important here to the Hellenism to raise the voice here in the States, United States, the diaspora, and up the hill, and this is why I want to thank personally Nick Lerigakis and AHI for raising the voice of Hellenism here up to the hill in the administration, because the situation in Cyprus is a real situation. Allow me, having on a personal basis, having served for 3 years in the Greek embassy in Nicosia in Cyprus, I have seen, and that is the message that we always keep on transferring to abroad, is that the dividing line is there, we can see it, the troops are there, the occupying troops, we can see it from a distance, the ghost city is there, and the people, the family of relatives of the missing persons are there, with a question mark for 45 years about the fate of their beloved relatives. So this is a real situation. This is international problem of illegal occupation, and this is what we need to say every day, that we not only that today that we commemorate this unfortunate event, but also every day that we speak to the interlocutors, especially here in the States, about what should be done. Of course, 45 years afterwards, Mr. Ambassador, I think that will say it more explicitly, but we are also in Greece, we are very happy to see that Cyprus is a modern state after the disaster that took place in '74, is a new modern state, a member of the European Union, and we are very happy together with Cyprus and Israel that we formed this very fruitful cooperation scheme with, in the Eastern Mediterranean, and which I have to say the United States is paying great attention now. Last March there was a meeting with the summit in Jerusalem with the participation of Mr. Pompeo. So this is, I think this is a situation that is developing quite well here in the States. The challenges and the provocations Turkey is proceeding to in the Eastern Mediterranean are well known. You read it in the newspapers. You can see from the coast of Cyprus sometimes the ships trying to drilling, and this is something that also we need to underline to the Hill and to the administration. And we are very, very pleased that here, especially with the Hill, following, I think, the efforts of everybody, and especially, I would say, here from the part of AHI, we have a very friendly environment here at the Hill and the Congress, and this is very important because Congress, after all, is the house of democracy here in the States, like this Ikinovulio parliament in Greece. So it's very important that people understand the situation and that we find really supporters here at the Hill. And this is something very, very important, I think, for both governments, Greece and Cyprus. I wish to thank you everybody who been here today. Thank you, Mr. Nikla Regakis, for all your efforts doing. And I don't know, this is a wish that we also always saying that let's hope that it's the last time that we commemorate this sad event. But the Hellenism is here and keep trying to achieve the solution.
I just want to thank you for what you're doing. Really appreciate your efforts. My grandfather, Adam Christodoulos, immigrated to the United States in 1914 when he was, 1912 when he was 14, all by himself. Unbelievable story, and one that I'm sure you've heard many times played over again and again and again. But very proud of him and what he did when he got here. He could not speak English. He didn't know anybody. He didn't have any money. The only thing he had was a dream to come to a country called America that he had heard that if you worked hard, you lived by the rules, you did what was right, you could do better for yourself and your family. And so he worked hard. His first job, he shined shoes for a living and made $5 a month, which is pretty incredible when you think about it. But that was in Altoona, Pennsylvania. He was frugal, saved his money, opened a cafe, opened a hat cleaning business when people used to all wear hats, not just those in the military. But at any rate, he did pretty well for himself for a guy who only went through the 3rd grade. And he and my grandmother had 7 children. They all got a college education. My father became a medical doctor, and I became the governor of Florida. It's an American story, and a great one, and what people of Cyprus stand for, and the Hellenic cause. And so thank you for what you're doing. One other story about my grandfather, in 1974, a fateful year, as you know, in Cyprus. He was visiting the island that summer with my aunt. And then all of a sudden, the Turks showed up. And we couldn't find out if he was alive and she was doing well. So we called our local congressman, one of my predecessors, a guy named Bill Young, and talked to staff in his office. And my father happened to be Congressman Young's personal physician. And so about 2 hours after we called, the congressman called my dad. And he said, we've located your father. I believe he said it was the 7th Fleet, got he and my aunt off the island, saved them, essentially. And the rest is kind of history, but a lot of tradition. And I first went to Cyprus years ago and went up to the Green Line and couldn't cross it because of my heritage. But I understand that's relaxed a bit now. And so I look forward to going back and being able to see the small village that my grandfather came from, near Famagusta, I think it was called Gastria. But at any rate, thank you for letting me come by and say hello. It's a privilege to have you here in the nation's capital. God bless you for what you're doing.
I'm so pleased to be here with so many friends, and of course to thank my friend Nick Larigakis for organizing this breakfast, this briefing. He just got back from Greece with a great number of students, and I'm in the long haul for Cyprus too. I put a bill in right before I got here, right when I got here, for that every illegal invader should get off the island. I thought we would succeed. The illegal invaders are still on the island. So it is an incredible challenge to continue to work for the independence and support of Greece and Cyprus. I do want to share with you that the Hellenic Caucus has invited we have reached out to Leader Pelosi. I've spoken to her. We've sent a letter requesting that the new leader of Greece, Mitsotakis, be invited to the United States Congress for a joint session to address the members of Congress and the Senate, and also to work for ways that these two democracies, we owe so much to the culture of Greece. Our own democracy came from the teachings of ancient Greece, and we're hopeful that in September, October, he'll be able to join us here in the United States Congress. Also, Cyprus, we have a strong tie and bond to them. They've been one of our staunchest allies in the world since its inclusion in the EU in 2004. I'm very pleased that when President Clinton was in office, I worked with Madeleine Albright to begin the process of bringing Cyprus into the European Union. It has strengthened the economy, the prestige. It's a fundamental change. I thought that bringing them into the EU would bring peace and justice and a settlement. It has not, but it brought many other very good things, and I'm proud for having initiated it back in the Clinton years. But as I said, it became part of the EU in 2004, and any member of the EU can veto any other country coming in if they feel that they have been unjustly treated. So guess who has a problem because Cyprus is in the EU? So strengthening our alliance must remain a constant foreign policy priority for the United States. This week we acknowledged a solemn anniversary for Cyprus, 45 years since the illegal invasion by Turkish troops who seized the northern third of the nation. To this day, the island and the people living on either side of the UN-monitored buffer zone remain separated, and there's some 40,000 Turkish troops occupying Cyprus today to, quote, enforce Turkey's will. Now, when you go to Cyprus, it's a very peace-loving place. You feel totally secure. There's absolutely no reason to have so many troops parading around, and if anything, it's almost bullying to have them there. And they also keep trying to get quotas of more people to move into the island from Turkey. We all know how the Turkish government uses its troops to inflict pain and suffering on their own people. Cyprus have many reasons to be concerned about these troops. I must say that when Erdogan came to the United States, there was a riot out in front of his hotel, and you could see him in the car. It was on television, encouraging these people to go over and beat up the Americans that were protesting. And the caucus, we wrote a letter saying that they should be put in jail. You don't act like that. And quite frankly, they did. They arrested them and they put them in jail for a period of time. But now they're out. But you know, we have certain laws and people have the right to protest in our country. But while the negotiations unfortunately have stalled, it remains true that a unified Cyprus free from Turkish troops is in the best interest of the United States and the entire Eastern Mediterranean. Our country has supported the talks. The talks are ongoing, as we all know. And most importantly, it is the desire of the Cypriot people themselves for unity. When I went to Cyprus roughly 3 years ago, I've been there twice, and this time the trees were growing up where the houses were, these magnificent, beautiful houses on the green zone. I think it's such a lost opportunity. And when you go down to Famagusta and Furusha, you see the dramatic impact that a divided Cyprus has had on on its people, and the really lack of being able to move forward with economic opportunities. And you could just visualize. They say that Varusha is one of the most beautiful beach resorts in the world, and now it's just a deserted ghost town. So it's very, very sad that the walls have come down around the world, in Berlin and other places, but still the walls remain there in Cyprus. And there are numerous examples of Turkish aggression in the Eastern Mediterranean, and violations of Greek airspace and territorial waters are commonplace. And I see my friend from the great city of New York, the great senator. Good to see you. And Turkey continues to intimidate and interfere with the companies operating in Cyprus' exclusive economic zone and violate Cyprus' sovereign claims to its territory. Now, one of the bills that the caucus passed and that became law was getting an accounting of the missing, and that was the Americans and other people that were missing and killed during the invasion, and we did succeed in that. And then there was a lot of hope that with this new exploration of energy in the area, that would bring everybody together. But unfortunately, there are near-term initiatives that Congress is pursuing right now to defend Cyprus's stability and sovereignty. Apparently, the Turkish country is sending over flights and boats and other things and claiming territorial waters too. So that is an international crisis too. The fiscal year 20 National Defense Authorization Act, which we just voted for, passed the House 2 weeks ago, and it included a provision that lifts the arms embargo on Cyprus that has been in place since 1987, so that Cyprus can now defend itself better, we hope. We have also successfully blocked the ability of Turkey to purchase from us our F-35 fighter planes. That was an initiative of the caucus to block that initiative. And this sends a loud, clear message to President Erdogan that the United States will never support Turkey's terrible behavior in the Eastern Mediterranean. And it sends the clear message that the people in Congress of the United States view Cyprus as a vital partner in global and regional security and sovereignty, economic competition, and energy development. We have two proposals, resolutions before Congress that support the economic sovereignty of Cyprus and the claim to the territorial waters for energy development. And I'm proud to champion this relationship in Congress through the Hellenic Caucus. We founded it after Turkey invaded the island of EMEA. How many of you remember that? When I first got here, Turkey was very, very strong in the Congress, and they were constantly putting bills on the floor that bashed Greece. And it was just like every other day. It was not unusual for me to go to my office and be greeted by members of the parliament from Cyprus or Greece, and who were concerned about initiatives that the basically Turkish caucus was putting on the floor of Congress. I'm very proud that since we founded the Hellenic Caucus after that invasion, so that we were constantly going to the war to or to the floor to sort of block whatever they were trying to do or to speak out against their invasion of EMEA and other actions. But I'm very proud that since we created the Hellenic Caucus, they don't even bother to go to the floor, because there's so many members of the Hellenic Caucus that they know they can't win. And that, I think, is a great victory, that we have stopped that aggressive action on the floor of Congress. I just want to add that I thank you all for your tireless advocacy in bringing Cypriot issues to the forefront and of our political efforts together to achieve freedom and self-determination for all Cypriots. It remains a goal of the Cypriot people, and that is a goal of mine also. And Nick is always a phone call away with what we have to do to change in the remittances procedure or in the OPIC program or in other ways that we can help Greece and help Cyprus. Again, I thank you for having me here, and I want to thank you so much for your friendship and support.
I would take this opportunity to raise this issue to you. because one of the most dire consequences of the invasion has been the issue of the missing persons. Of 1,510 Greek Cypriots who went missing during the summer of 1974, only the remains of 687 have been identified to this day. That means there are still 823 persons whose fate has yet to be determined. 823 families that are still waiting for news of their loved ones. Even on this purely humanitarian issue, Turkey continues to be provocative and unhelpful by obstructing efforts to determine the fate of those missing and refusing to give information and access to sites where they may be located. And I just wanted to share with you a personal experience. I spoke last week at the Greek Orthodox Church, and I referred to this issue because I believe it demonstrates the tragedy of the missing person. In 1974, I was 16 years old, and I remember our neighbors. They had a son, doctor of medicine. He got married with a lady from Crete, and they were living on the island of Crete. They had a daughter of 2 months old, and they came for holidays to Cyprus to see the grandparents for the first time. And the invasion came. The son, who was a Cypriot, was called, and he went missing. I remember his mother, during the whole months of July, August, September, pacing on the balcony, waiting for news for her son. Both she and her husband passed away without having any knowledge about his whereabouts, where he was dead, buried, no closure. His daughter is now 45 years old, and she doesn't even know where the remains of her father are. So just to show behind the words, the emotions that people feel about this issue, and I think, it was one of the first issues taken up in the U.S. Congress about the American citizens missing at the time. So, despite our countless attempts and negotiations and efforts at peacefully resolving the Cyprus problem, Turkey continues to maintain its hostile stance. Its recent decision to commence illegal drilling operations within Cyprus's territorial waters and exclusive economic zone can only be described by what President Anastasiadis has characterized as the second invasion of Cyprus. As we speak, there are 2 drilling ships, one in Western Cyprus, one in the territorial waters of Cyprus on the east, and a ship in the south, outside Limassol, and they are all accompanied by the Turkish Navy frigates and drones. While these adversities have resulted in an entrenched situation on the ground, the government of Cyprus remains fully committed to the United Nations facilitated process to reach a sustainable and enduring settlement that would reunify Cyprus on the basis of a bizonal bicommunal federation in accordance with the United Nations security resolutions and in full respect of the human rights of all Cypriots, without foreign troops and guarantors. The resolution of the Cyprus problem cannot be seen in isolation, particularly in the light of developments in the Eastern Mediterranean. As a member of the European Union, and as a beacon of Western values in a volatile region, Cyprus hopes to be a stabilizing force and can foster cooperation, reconciliation, peace, and prosperity for the wider Middle East. It was referred previously about our trilateral cooperation with Greece and Israel, and which is being also reflected in the legislation promoted now in Congress on the Eastern Mediterranean Act, for which we are grateful. In our ongoing struggle, your contribution, and Congress has been a very staunch ally of our efforts. We count on your support. With an unwavering commitment, we will spare no effort and ultimately succeed in reuniting our homeland.
I did want to say that with all that's going on, particularly with regard to Cyprus and the energy issues, because our committee, Energy and Commerce Committee, has jurisdiction over all the energy issues. My offer to continue to be helpful whenever we can in trying to prevent Turkey from continuing this offshore drilling in the exclusive economic zone. I know the EU has taken a position against it. I think we, as a country, have to be stronger about it. And I was very pleased to see that Gus Bilirakis and Ted Deutsch have introduced this bill. I think it's called the U.S. Eastern Mediterranean Energy Center, which I support, and basically facilitating energy cooperation between the United States, Israel, Greece, and Cyprus. And it includes the prohibition on, or lifting, I should say, the prohibition on arms sales to Cyprus, continuing to block the transfer of the F-35 aircraft to Turkey. I just think that it's really important that we, as an ally of Greece and Cyprus, continue to put pressure on the other theoretical ally, which is Turkey, as part of NATO, to say that this conduct is simply unacceptable. The EU obviously takes that position, and we need to be stronger about it as well. I wanted to say that it was interesting because I, of course, have a very large Greek-American community, but I also have a Turkish community, and a lot of times I'm always reluctant to speak to them a little bit because I worry that, because I'm the co-chair of the Armenia Caucus and because I'm active in the Hellenic Caucus, that they're just going to see me as an enemy. But what I have found over the last year or two in talking to Turkish Americans who are not, part of any organization or anything, is this deep hatred of Erdogan and what's happening in Turkey, that they simply find it unacceptable. There's a guy that owns a gas station in my hometown that I was talking to over the weekend, which is why I was thinking about it. And he just went on and on about how you, Congressman, I'm so glad that you're out there speaking out against Erdogan and his efforts to, transform Turkey away from democracy and away from becoming an ally in the United States. And so it just dawned on me more and more that in many ways, the Turkish American community supports our efforts because they're not happy with their own country and certainly not happy with Erdogan and his policies. And so I just think that we have to continue to try to find allies and groups. I know that Arms here from the Armenian National Committee, because Turkey has increasingly become an outlier within the EU in terms of its alliance with the United States and NATO, in terms of the actions it takes against other countries, and even Israel, which at one time was so supportive of Turkey, obviously is very unhappy with a lot of the things that they've done in terms of taking actions that were not in Israel's interest. So let's sometimes you get disgusted and say, when are we ever going to resolve the Cypriot Cyprus and have a unified island, or when are we going to see Turkey stop its actions against Greece? But I do think that we're on the right side and that increasingly you have more allies and they become more isolated. So just keep doing what you're doing.
So with that, we are at that hour, and I think at this point we will have to adjourn these proceedings. Unfortunately, once again, we've had this commemoration because the issue is still unresolved, and we hope, as the ambassador said a few minutes ago, that next year and for years after we can celebrate resolution to the Cyprus issue where Cyprus is whole, free, and at peace. And that is what we hope for. That's what we strive for, because we know that in the end of the day serves U.S. interest in the Eastern Mediterranean. So once again, I thank you very much for coming out here today to help us commemorate this. And we look forward to seeing you next time and wishing you all a good rest of the summer. Thank you once again.